Hi everyone and welcome to our podcast, Behind of a Murder Mind, the Pozzeto massacre. Today we are joined by our psychologist specialist and fan of this tragic event, Mario Rodríguez. To give some context to this story, let's get to know our main character, Campo Elias, a Colombian murderer who took the lives of 29 people, including his own mother, on December 4 on 1986, and injured 15 others in three different locations in Bogota: a building in the north where he gave private English lessons, the building where he lived, and the Pozzeto restaurant, which he regularly visited.
Okay, have we given much thought to whether there is a brain chemical component in the mind of a murderer that an ordinary person does not have? What can you say about this?
Oh, that is a nice question, actually. Well, actually, more than a chemical component, what has been found in serial killers is that there is a deficiency or a significant reduction in the development of what is called the prefrontal cortex. This area, which is part of the brain, is responsible for maintaining what we call limbic control or the limbic system, which is related to primary emotions such as anger, rage, and fear. Therefore, in serial killers, a deficiency in this prefrontal cortex has been found in addition to a reduction in what is commonly called a gray matter. When we compare serial killers to other people who are normal or not killers, basically these two things have been found to be related to people who are serial killers, rather than a chemical component that makes them different from a normal person.
That's a nice point of view, Mario. But I have another question. Taking into account the personality behavior of Campolias, was it predictable that this massacre was going to happen, or maybe not? Could it have been predicted?
That is a hard question, but I'm gonna try my best to answer it. It is very difficult to predict the behavior that any human being will have in the future, regardless of their emotional background or possible problems, traumas, or of mental illnesses. It is almost impossible. It's really hard, actually. There are people who have had extremely serious mental problems, and they have lived a normal life, or at least they have never killed anyone. But in this specific case, in the case of Campo Elias, he was a Green Beret in the American Army. There is a myth that he was a Vietnam veteran, but that's not true. The dates doesn't match, and actually he was never in Vietnam. He was serving in Panama and Texas as an engineer, so that's not possible. However, if we do a little bit of research in his history, we discovered that when he was a child, something really marked his mental health, and that was his father's suicide. His father committed suicide, and since that event, the relationship with his mother grew worse and worse and worse. Eh, they got to a point that he decided to go to Colombia, then Argentina. He even got married and had a son, but the relationship with his mother was still really bad. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so yeah, be a little bit patient with me. But well, the relationship with his mother was really bad, and it never got better. Never. When he used to talk to his mother used to blame him for many of the things that he was going through. So that made things way worse. And when he actually started like killing people and everything, one of the first people that he killed was his own mother. In other words, there was such a conflict, there was such a problem with his mother that had been going on since his father's suicide that was the first person he killed. That's how bad it was. And I think that these kind of things could affect and influence his decision to commit a massacre. What is certain is that in military personnel, this propensity towards violence can be triggered. In fact, the fact of being a military man may have triggered it. In the biography, they talk about how he once had a fight with a thief in New York. And it is true that in the military there must be a strict control. Like you gotta be really strict, especially for those who are in combat when they return. because there have been many cases of soldiers who return with mental problems due to post-traumatic stress, which I mean makes sense. You know, you were in a war, you saw a lot of people die, etc., etc. But there have been cases that due to this post-traumatic stress, they can potentially become very violent. There have been people that have decided to commit a massacre or even kill themselves. It is no secret that this has happened several times. Therefore, it is very important that soldiers who return from combat are treated preventatively. That they should go to a psychologist or something. Even if they think that they are well, it's good for them to go so they can know how their what is the his mental health state and that kind of stuff. If they can adapt well to society or if they need treatment. In any case, they must be on the radar of mental health professionals, such as psychiatrics, so that they do not become possible future murderers or possible sociopaths who could cause harm.
Tell us, how can psychopathic behavior be trained and prevented in the general population?
That's an interesting question, actually. But okay, first of all, we gotta define some things. First, it is very difficult to define if a person has a psychopathic behavior. It's not that easy. There are some signs, of course, there are some warning signs that a person may have a psychopathic in the sense that they may have a violent personality. That is, they may not have empathy for people. That's another sign. They may be immune to the suffering of others, etc. These type of people are considered psychopaths or have psychopathy or whatever. It is really difficult to detect. Sometimes there are serial killers who even appear as totally normal and empathic people. Like your neighbor could be a serial killer, and he may look like someone who's normal, but he may not be. But there are times that there are warning signs, and there are times where there are no warning signs. And it turns out that there are serial killers. But what is true is that since childhood, there are factors or signs that a child may have some kind of mental illness, mental condition, or some kind of emotional deficiency. Those children who, for example, do not feel fear, there is an alarm because that's not normal, you know. You should be afraid of something at the very least, you know. Some children who at some point laugh at violence or find pleasure in violence, there is a problem, and that's becoming really common today in today's society. Children who are not able to make friendships, that's a problem. For example, with Campo Elias, he was not able to make any friends. He was a person who did not have friends at all. So it was difficult for him to have a relationship with a person and sustain it for a long time. I mean, it's kind of impressive that he got married without friends, but I mean, he did. But who can make friends and cultivate them? No, he was not capable. He was not capable of making any friends. That's another warning sign. So, I believe that prevention must start from childhood because it is where the personality begins to form. It is also where many traumas are seen that in the future are the ones that cause personality disorders. Then, in childhood, it is possible to prevent diseases, both mental illnesses proper and types of behavior that may be harmful to society.
Well, Mario, this topic is very deep, but I recognize that I'm enjoying. So, I think that I'm not the only one who is enjoying this. I think everyone who is listening our podcast is enjoying too. So, to continue, to connect the pieces and understand a little more the mind that was behind this massacre, Mario, I would like to know what behavioral characteristics do murders have, and which of these coincide or are similar with those of Campolias?
To be more specific about Campolias, his behaviors can be attributed to four things found by his biographers regarding what might have affected his behavior. Now, we will talk about the characteristics of that behavior. First, is that he witnessed many times his father's abuse toward his mother. The second, as previously mentioned, is when he committed suicide, he was only 6 years old. His father committed suicide, and that, of course, had a great impact on him. The third is the terrible relationship he had with his mother. The relationship was very bad. And fourth, there was one that was there was one that was talked about a lot of about. Oh, sorry, can I repeat that again? It's my throat. So yeah. So the fourth reason, there was one that was talked about a lot and that apparently was not so important, but it was really important. And it was the mistreatment of a neighbor's parrot that he had, which ended up dying. Cousin instead, Aaron, he witnesses that as a child. Let's say the mothers have a little empathy, meaning that they are not capable of putting themselves in another person's shoes to feel their pain, sadness, anguish, etc. They are totally egocentric people, meaning that the only thing that matters to them is themselves and nothing else. They are people who normally blame another person for all their problems or shortcomings or the things they lack. We all know someone like that. But in Campos Elias' case, he blamed his mother for everything, every single thing. Another characteristic previously mentioned is that it's normally difficult for a mother to establish a long-term relationship. For example, a neighbor may be a psychopath and not know it because he behaves well and is kind, but maintaining a long-term relationship is difficult. They cannot do it precisely because they are not interested. They are totally egocentric. But there are exemptions, of course. So a long-term relationship or making friendship is quite difficult for them. Another characteristic is violent behavior, meaning that the person has a propensity towards violence, towards getting into fights, towards hurting another people or animal, or even themselves. Another one could be that these individuals have rather abrupt behavioral changes, meaning that at a moment they feel one way and in a few minutes they are a different person. Now, this is different than being bipolar. Those are two completely different things. That too is one of the characteristics that mothers have. And finally, I like to add one more characteristic that I've seen in a bunch of serial killers, and that is there are people, and that is they believe that they are way smarter than everyone else. They are the most smart person on earth. They are superior to any other person, meaning they have a delusion of superiority. And because of that delusion of superiority, they believe they have the right to end other people's lives or undermine the rights of other people.
With all of the above, how does childhood background affects a murderer or psychopath's behavior and decision making?
What a way of ending this. I love this question. In the case of Campo Elias, I think that the antecedents of his childhood, in my view, have more influence on the decision he made to commit a massacre. Simply being a military man was what helped detonate all those things that were accumulating in his psyche since childhood. Since I mentioned before, his father's suicide, his father mistreating his mother, the parrot incident, and who knows what other things could have affected his childhood to the point where he was a person who was unable to have any friends. A person with a history of violence, a person who blamed his mother for everything, etc. So, obviously, all those childhood antecedents can affect or may be shaping a potential murderer or psychopath. And in the future, they may lead to decisions that make him a perpetrator of massacres or other similar things.
With that, we end our interview. Thank you, Mario, for your time and share with us a little more about what happened behind the mind of Campolias, the murder of Pozzeto.
Juanjo, this was definitely a significant event. I consider it one of many historical alarms that indicate we should pay more attention to certain things. In fact, as they say, those who don't know their history are automated to repeat it. Which brings me to an even more crucial point: the importance of taking care of our mental health from childhood.
Totally agree, Luna. While mental health is a now common topic of interest, sadly, there are still households where it's not given much importance. However, what people may not know is that through good and healthy mental development from an early age, we can prevent more significant catastrophes in different parts of a person's life, especially in even worse case like that Campo Elias, the Pozzeto killer.
Well, speaking of the levels of interest and importance we place on these issues, our production team asked some students from the Colombo Americano English Academy in Bogota some questions, and their answers were impressive. They surprised me.
That's right, Luna. To keep things off with energy, as the first question, we asked the students if they were aware of the Pozzeto massacre. And what do you think their response was?
Well, personally, I think they had no idea what you were talking about.
I thought the same, but their response were impressive. The majority said they were aware of the Pozzeto massacre. And not only that, they are passionate about the topic. Through the book Satanás by reading Mario Mendoza, they were able to get a more personal understanding of that happened in Pozzeto.
No way, that was one of the first books I loved in my life. These kids have excellent taste in reading. Did you know that currently over 2,000 copies of that book have been sold? It's a huge number for a Colombian publisher. The book narrates the story of the Pozzeto massacre, combining fictional stories with the reality of the event, captivating readers from the first page. Undoubtedly, it has become one of the primary means throughout which knowledge about this event has spread.
I think that I'm going to read the book.
You have to read it.
All right, but we must continue. For our next question, we ask the students if they believe that what happens during the child's development determines or affects their behaviors as adults. In response to this question, they state that a person's personality and behaviors are clearly based on upbringing and experience that shape their character from an early age.
That's true. However, we must keep in mind that each child is like a surprise box, and each one has a different personality and unique mind. This doesn't mean that all of them will grow up without any issues that might affect them at some point in their lives.
Exactly. That's why it's essential to monitor our mental health even as adults, to detect any potential issues in our brains that could hinder a normal behavior in a society and precisely to avoid the mental catastrophe that Campolias experienced.
And for the people who is listening to our podcast, remember that just like any medical checkup, taking care of our mental health is equally important. Have in mind it.
Great advice, Lou. I'll schedule an appointment with my psychologist for the next week right away. I'm glad we are talking about this because the next question asked is perfect for the occasion. It was, do you think it's essential to take care of mental health from childhood to prevent incidents like the one in Pozzeto?
The majority of students agreed that mental health care from childhood is crucial. They explained that throughout an upbringing that prioritizes mental health, it's more likely for a child to grow up with emotional intelligence tools, feeling supported and free to express their emotions while also learning to manage them. It serves as a significant help and support in mentally facing what life has in store for them. However, they also pointed out that some individuals are born with a genetic or brain related conditions that require responsible medical support.
I agree. Cases involving genetic or brain related conditions are a special situation that we can prevent from childhood. Nevertheless, they can be treated and monitored.
Are you ready, Juanjo? Because the next question is controversial and might spark a debate.
Come on, don't be dramatic and tell us how it went with the next question.
Sometimes suspense is good to engage the audience. The next question asked is they believe that serving in the military could lead to traumas or aggressive behaviors in a person's future.
The students indicate that it's probable because people react differently to experience such events. There are many factors that influence a person acquiring aggressive and post-traumatic behavior after serving in the military. Some individuals feel that it gives them a sense of purpose, they acquire valuable skills, and they fight for a common good. However, there are delicate situations in a war that create high levels of stress and trauma. And even good mental health might not prevent a mental breakdown and after experience something like that.
It might sound hard, but this helps me understand better why Campolías, the Pozzeto killer, had these behaviors. To give a bit more context, it's said that Campolías was a former combatant in the United States Army, and this fact was one of the main factors contributing to his mental collapse.
In my personal opinion, psychological support for veterans and warfighters should be strengthened. as it highly likely to recover from a physical injuries, but mental damage is a more delicate matter.
You're right, Juanjo. The mind is a vast field responsible for our entire functioning. I dare say it's the most important organ humans have, and it deserves proper attention. Now, to conclude with the questions, we asked the students at Colombo to give us their opinion on solutions to the current lack of attention to mental health.
Great suggestion, Lou. I'm surprised by the students' interest in these less discussed topics. They all agreed on two primary solutions. First, educating parents to raise awareness about the importance of mental health and its care. And second, increase the availability of mental health service by creating funding resources in schools and institutions.